Whispers in the shadows, the terrifying encounter beyond the trees. Scary story. Halloween eggs. On Halloween, everything is strange. Of all the nights of the year, there is no other that compares to it, as on this date. Events as extraordinary as they are terrifying take place, where nothing makes sense. Let me share with you the story of something that happened to me one Halloween night. When I was a teenager, I lived with my mother in a private community in Las Cañadas, Zapopan, Jalisco. It was a tradition in that place to go out for candy every year. However, my mother never let us leave the community because, living so close to the forest, she was afraid something might happen to us. That year, some cousins from Queer Taro were visiting, and they told me they liked to play pranks on Halloween. What they enjoyed most was finding a bridge from where they could throw rotten eggs at cars. In fact, that day, they asked my sister and me where they could go to throw eggs. When you're young, everything seems easy and you don't measure the consequences. So, we agreed to their proposals. To disguise ourselves, we put on costumes and went around the community. Once we had the chance, we picked up some eggs that my cousins had hidden in the yard. We would hide them in our bags, where we kept the candy, and then exit the community through one of the openings designed for draining rainwater. It wasn't difficult to sneak out. That year, the number of kids on the street was higher than I had witnessed in previous years. We took advantage of this to hide from the guard. Although someone did see us escape, it was a neighbor who lived in front of my house, a solitary man who always seemed a bit hostile and didn't communicate much with my mom. I wasn't concerned that he would report us at that moment. We emerged right next to the main road, with a stream on the other side leading to a small forest. This was the area our mother prohibited us from going to because, according to community rumors, before we moved there, twins had disappeared and some neighbors claimed they were never found. Others insisted they saw the bodies face up in a muddy area deep within the forest. My cousins asked me which way to go to throw eggs, and I told them we would have to walk a long stretch. One of them started to complain to me for not telling them we were far away and mockingly smashed an egg on my head. One of his sisters tried to calm them down. All of this was happening when we saw a truck turning at the end of the street, one of those employee transport vehicles taking people to work in factories. My older cousins got very excited. They instructed us to hide in some bushes and, from there, throw the eggs together at the truck. According to them, it was impossible for them to see us. Everything happened so quickly that I can't say for sure if the truck stopped upon getting hit by the eggs, or if it had stopped earlier and we foolishly bombarded the door. But when I least expected it, the bus door swung open and a heavy-set man came running out, shouting obscenities. He had a pipe in one hand. We all got scared and ran like crazy towards the stream. My sister and I, being the youngest, lagged behind. We could hear the footsteps of the driver chasing us, but after a while, we managed to lose him. We stopped and looked back, seeing him return on foot, shouting curses. Seconds later, we caught our breath, realizing it was starting to get dark. My sister and I felt a lot of fear, not only about being in the forest in the dark, but also about the scolding awaiting us from our mom. My sister began to cry, and one of my cousins yelled at her to be quiet, saying it was just a matter of retracing our steps. However, we walked for a long time without finding any familiar streets. My other cousins started crying. Back then, cell phones weren't in use. We kept walking again and again, but we always ended up in the same place, under a very dense tree. It was strange, because even though we followed the river on both sides, we consistently ended up at the same spot. One of my cousins lit a cigarette, and as he smoked, he stared into the distance with his back to us. Suddenly, he turned towards us and said he saw light in the distance, instructing us to follow him. We reached the light, which was a bulb hanging on a wall behind a private community. My sister and I felt relieved to see houses. It wouldn't be so hard to find the street now. One of my cousins claimed to have found something near the wall. We all approached to see what it was, a basket full of brown eggs. My older cousins told me to carry them. I couldn't understand how, even after getting lost, they still wanted to engage in mischief. Anyway, I ended up carrying them. Halloween eggs. I thought we were close to ending that adventure. However, as we continued walking along the wall, I realized we were heading in the opposite direction of our community. Worse yet, we found ourselves back in a wooded area. My sister couldn't stop crying. I left the basket of eggs on the ground and hugged her. My other cousins cried too. Suddenly, one of them screamed that he heard something behind the trees. We all stepped back, huddling with our backs against each other. The eldest of my cousins lit his lighter, and then we saw the face of a horrifying woman in front of us. I couldn't find words to describe her, and I only saw her for a few seconds because we all screamed and ran. Unfortunately, I tripped in front of the basket of eggs, and through tears, I watched as some eggs hatched. Whatever came out of those shells wasn't chickens. They made a horrifying sound, like a little child crying. I tried to get up when I felt a claw grip my leg. Desperation took over me, and I screamed until my throat hurt. One of my cousins came back, lifted me, and we ran a long distance. Every now and then, we stopped because we heard laughter and whispers in the darkness, as if that strange woman was stalking us. We stopped near the stream, and one of my cousins told us to look. In one hand, he held his lighter, and in the other, one of the eggs I had left behind. We watched as a disgusting little creature twisted in his palm, nothing like a chicken. Its eyes stared at us, while its entire body writhed in agony. My cousin dropped that monstrous thing while one of my cousins screamed that a witch was in front of us. I don't remember much beyond that, only that when we waited, several adults found us, all carrying flashlights. Several adults, led by the neighbor who had seen us leave, found us. They also saw the witch, whom they illuminated with their lamps. Unfortunately, the image of that spectral woman just as she appeared, also disappeared. The same did not happen with the eggs. When we mentioned them to the adults, they shone their lights where my cousin had dropped one of them. Although the little abomination no longer made any sound, it remained there, disgusting and horrifying. You can imagine the scolding we received. I spent several nights struggling to sleep well, haunted by nightmares of what we had experienced. Over time, I moved to live with my father in Hermosillo, Sonora. There, I shared my story with an aunt who told me we narrowly escaped danger, as witches often steal children to feed on their life energy, especially on days rich in energy like Halloween or Day of the Dead. I have visited my mother a couple of times now that I'm an adult, and conversations about the incident with the witch have come up. As the area is now fully urbanized, and the forest reduced to a quarter of its original size, I asked her if anything strange had happened in that area again. She told me that when the developers were excavating for new housing, they found some interesting things: the remains of more than 5 children, accompanied by objects used in witchcraft. Who knows what might have happened that time if my mother and the other neighbors hadn't arrived. As for me, I don't let my children go out for Halloween candy. Thank you for joining us for this spine-tingling story. We hope you found it both thrilling and thought-provoking. If you enjoyed this video, please consider participating in our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing it with your friends. Your support goes a long way in helping us create more engaging content for you. Goodbye, and may you always tread carefully in the world of the unknown.